going to get started, first of all, by telling you a story. And everything that I talk about today has rhyme or reason, even if at first it doesn't quite make sense. But imagine this, imagine that at 14 years old, you're walking from a small village in Mexico to the United States because you're looking for a better opportunity for your lifestyle. There's not a lot going on in Mexico. So the reason I'm telling you is that this is a story of my family. And this is not a picture of my dad. This is an AI picture, but you get the gist, right? So imagine at 14 years old, the challenges that you're facing and that you're so in such desperate, dire need that you have to actually walk. It took my dad a week to get to the United States. And he did that over the course of starting at 14 through 19. And him and my mom lived in a small village. They grew up together. And so they got married and they immigrated to the United States because they wanted a lot more opportunities for themselves and ultimately for me. When my mom was 1920, she was pregnant with me and she went into premature labor. And I was barely born in the United States. They probably lived here less than a year before I was born. And she went into premature labor and I was born early and I was in the NICU for 2 to 3 months because I only weighed about 3 pounds. And so the reason I'm sharing this is that when we think about all the opportunities that we have here in the United States, sometimes I think that we take it for granted, everything that we do have. And when I share the struggle and the challenges of other people for my family, I'm a first generation American. I'm barely born in the United States. And some of the things that I faced growing up, I can remember when I was in kindergarten. I started kindergarten and I did not know a lick of English, nothing, like absolutely nothing. I'm first generation American and my parents only speak Spanish. And so being the oldest, I started school and I can clearly remember not understanding a lot of stuff. And memories are vague, but some of what I do remember is that I was held back in kindergarten because I didn't speak the language. And the memories are fuzzy, but some of the things that I do remember is certain instances when I felt uncomfortable and I didn't understand. So for example, I remember picture day and I was always, shy, quiet. And then can you imagine just being in a place where you feel lost, you don't understand the language and people are telling you stuff. And I remember this word that the photographer kept saying to me, and it was like, smile. And I had no clue what that word meant. I had never heard it before. And I just was like shrugging my shoulders. I have no idea what you're saying. I'm thinking to myself in Spanish, I have no idea. And he smiled, show your teeth. And I was like, okay. So basically, here's me with my understanding of what he was saying. I did exactly what he told me. I showed my teeth. So as you can see, this is not a smile. This is me following directions. But the reason I'm sharing this is mostly because that kind of started my journey with a struggle story, not understanding language, and being held back gave me an opportunity to be able to have another year in kindergarten and start learning English. And then by the time I got to first grade, when you start reading and they teach you English and reading, and it just turned into a lifelong obsession of learning. And for me, fast forward, going through high school, I loved learning anything and everything. I got to college. I have 4 degrees and I'm a lifelong learner. And the reason that I wanted to share this story, first of all, is that if you don't take anything away from this entire presentation, I want you to take this one thing away. The thought that you are in a unique position. It's a new era. It's 2024 right now, and digital AI, everything is just coming at lightning speed, and you have opportunities that I can only imagine where I'd be if I had the opportunities that you have. And secondly, because living where we're at, this is a land of opportunity, and it really is up to you to be able to take control of your life. And that's what we're going to tackle today. Is personal branding is a concept that it's pretty vast and there's a lot of aspects to it. But my goal today is to try to get you at least a foundation of an understanding of where you can start. I would like for you to just consider this and raise your hand or drop an emoji in the chat box if you've ever thought about how can you increase your income. If you've imagined at any point being able to double or even triple your current earnings, how you can maybe reach more people, not necessarily being Insta famous, but maybe reaching more clients, becoming more well-known, or even setting up opportunities for yourself. When you're attracting more clients, having clients that you're not having to chase, actually having a roster full of clients that are eager to work with you because they already know you. And maybe that you're just looking for some career advancement opportunities to get a promotion or some speaking engagements or brand deals, whatever that might be. All of these things really are within your reach if you start making changes in your mindset and implementing at least some of the strategies that we're going to talk about in this workshop. And I'm going to move pretty quickly. If at any point you have questions about something, just make sure that you write them down and we'll try to address those at the end. So how exactly can you make a difference in the quality of your life and make advancements? How exactly does this happen? And there's one concept that we're going to tackle, and that's branding. When you think about branding, it sometimes feels like a vague word, but brands like Apple, for example, they've positioned their organization as a strong brand, and they have true fans. These are fans that you've seen the news stories where they line up for hours, sometimes even a day before the launch of their latest products, and they're willing to even prepay for stuff that hasn't even come out yet. So when you think about that, what makes a good brand? How does that even happen? It's not just advertising. It's actually the concept of branding. And here's what you're going to learn today. So I'm going to do my best to try to get you a better understanding of what branding is, why you need to start investing in yours, and how to even start, or if you've been tackling it, how to grow your brand. In today's age, your personal brand really is your most valuable asset. As trainers, as coaches, or instructors, it's really crucial that you start to harness the power of the tools that you have available to you. For example, social media. You can build your brand, easily connect with your audience, and ultimately convert your followers into clients, or even maybe your next job opportunity. So if you've ever found yourself in a position where you've been struggling, searching online for ways to try to get ahead in your career, in your fitness industry, in your business. Maybe you've downloaded every resource, if you've ever invested in courses, but somehow all of that feels vague and you still don't, you feel like there's something missing, like you don't quite understand. And you doubt whether you can even get started in this. I totally understand what you're going through. While I'm not a personal trainer, I have been in your shoes. I've been there, trying to get started, being confused, not knowing where to start, because honestly, there's a lot of components to it and it does feel overwhelming. I want to share a little bit more about my journey because I want to show you an example of how you can actually use some of these tools and concepts to change the direction of your life. So I started out, I shared my story about being a first generation American, not understanding English, and then moving into being a lifelong learner. And I have 4 degrees. I have a graphic design degree, I have a master's in corporate branding, and I just recently got a master's in digital marketing, and I have a BA in art. And being a lifelong learner, I thought, you know what? Maybe I want to be a teacher. So I started off as a teacher and I taught art in middle school. And then I taught branding and design at the college level. But somehow that just wasn't fulfilling for me. It wasn't quite a natural fit. And I found myself struggling being in a classroom where I was completely feeling out of place. I felt drained. And I reached a breaking point and I realized that, you know what? I'm trying to fit myself into a place that I don't really belong. I realized at some point, you know what? I'm an introvert. I'm not getting enough downtime to decompress. This is not working for me. And I actually hit a breaking point. So at that point, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize that, you know what? I have to make a change somehow. And I made a decision, and it was a pretty drastic decision. I quit my job. I quit without having any kind of backup plan. And that can be challenging in itself. And you're trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do next? But that gave me some free time. And I started tinkering on social media just out of curiosity. And I started finding it fun. It was intriguing. And I found it to be a challenge. I like to learn things. And I actually hired somebody to help me try to figure out how to use social media, because I was seeing that a lot of people are using social media to actually build a business. How can I do that? If they can do it, I can do it. And so I hired somebody to help me. And little by little, I took some of the knowledge that they provided me about social media. And then, of course, I have a background in branding. So I applied that and I started showing up. Even though it was uncomfortable, I was feeling out of my element. I started just showing up consistently and being strategic in what I was posting and what I was trying to say. People started reaching out to me. And funny enough, at that time, I started getting into fitness, and the first people that started reaching out to me were personal trainers that wanted help with their personal brand and their social media. And slowly but surely, I started getting clients. And then even to the point where my gym hired me for some work. And so over time, I've been able to create my own business, digital marketing, social media, and branding. And none of this would have happened if I hadn't taken that first step. If I hadn't decided, what I'm doing today isn't working for me. I've got to do something different. And I'm in a position where, you know what, I might not get it right, but I'm going to try. And so I changed my mindset and I started working toward that. And this transformation led me to where I'm at today. Obviously, there's a lot of room for growth. I'm not exactly, there's no end goal. But if you continuously invest in your growth and make that a mindset, then anything that you want to achieve is a possibility. You don't have to stay stuck where you're at. And so this is really what I want to hone into you, is that if you're feeling like, you know what, I don't really know what I'm doing, or I want to be in somewhere different, you don't have to stay struggling. You can make a choice and make a difference. So my promise to you is that I'm going to try my best to provide you with some clear, actionable direction to help you transform your current career or your current business situation and go from unknown and struggling to become more visible and profitable. And for your part, I would just ask that during this time, you give me your attention, your full attention, follow along, take some notes, and ultimately take some action. At the end of this, do something different than you were doing before. So let's start off with the basics. First is talk about what is personal brand. What is a personal brand? It's not just a logo or a catchy tagline. It really is the essence of who you are and what you represent. It's how you present yourself to the world, and it's that impression that you leave on others. Jeff Bezos once said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And for you in the fitness industry, in the gym, your brand is a combination of the legacy of every training session you deliver, every interaction that you have, in person, online, offline. It's the lasting impression that you leave on your clients, and it's the reputation that you build over time. So I want to share a short clip to solidify that concept, that your brand is your reputation.
A lot to go over in this video, so please bear with me. First off, just because you're filming at the gym does not mean that everybody else has to stop their workout just for you, including putting their weights back. And secondly, you're a personal trainer and coach. How do you not know better than to work out directly in front of a dumbbell rack, let alone film in front of it? And if somebody does come along, you move immediately. And this man is nothing but nice to you, but you decide to put this post up anyway? Seriously? And what's even crazier is right after this, you post to advertise your challenge saying how you're so thoughtful and non-judgmental. Then immediately after that, you post this, making fun of this man on a treadmill. How thoughtful and non-judgmental. I hope this gym sees this and kicks your ass out. You need to do better. Mind your own business.
Right, so the reason I'm sharing that particular video is not to be like, oh, watch what you do as a trainer or a gotcha or whatever, to call that person out, but really to hone on the concept that this is a powerful reminder that what you say and what you do have to be consistent. And it's really a reminder that your brand is more than just what you post online or the interactions that you have that are what you're posting shows you're saying you're one thing, because if it's inconsistent, people are going to see through that. It has to be the same. And really, you have a digital footprint that you leave everywhere with every interaction, whether it's in person, that's your footprint, but a digital footprint would be every post that you make, every piece of content, etc. And it really shows that your behavior, your overall behavior leaves an impression, and that impression becomes part of your reputation. So really the definition of a personal brand is showing up in a way that shows who you are, what you're great at, and what makes you different from others. But ultimately, it's that understanding of who you are that leads people to either love you or be repelled. And you actually are in a position to be able to control that for the most part. That's one of the key things that I want you to take away from this. So, what is it that you want your brand to say about you? Personal branding isn't about being Insta famous or being the next Dwayne Johnson or whatever. I really want you to understand that this whole workshop is not about tactics on how to grow Insta fame or how to go viral. It's about developing the foundation of a strong personal brand that's going to extend over decades, over time, and it's going to lead you to success in whatever field that you decide to go in, whatever direction you're wanting to move in. It's about being known for something specific. It really is about the association between who you are, what you offer, and what your target audience needs and wants. It's the perceived value. A strong personal brand can elevate your profile, it can showcase your expertise, and it really connects your passion to your audience. Personal branding is the secret weapon to finding your space in a very crowded industry. If you didn't already know, health, fitness, and wellness is probably the #1 niche online. And in this very crowded space, your personal brand is what's going to help you stand apart. It's how clients are going to find you and why they're going to choose you over somebody else. So today we're going to learn some simple concepts about ways to start the foundation of building your brand in a way that stands out and starts to connect with people on a personal level. But there is some great news. In this crowded space, 6 out of 10 trainers online, coaches, they haven't even started working on their personal brand. They're just showing up, documenting themselves, doing what everybody else is doing. The trainers that are doing and working on a personal brand actually have the potential to earn more income. They're showing increased revenue, 25, 50%, etc. Personal branding is really essential for recognition, for client attraction, for career opportunities, and for authority building, and even to establish yourself as a thought leader. Personal branding can elevate your career by making you more recognizable, attracting ideal clients, and opening doors to new opportunities. When you start focusing on your personal brand, it's a win situation, not just for you, but your employer. If you're working at a gym currently, like all of us are here, your building your personal brand is going to attract more people to you as an individual, but it's also going to be a win for your employer, for your gym. And that's something that they're going to notice. Of course, if you're looking to advance in position, maybe you want to be the next level trainer or moving up to be the fitness director, etc. Working on your personal brand and showing your expertise and getting those results is going to help position you in front of the right people to open up those doors for you. Personal branding isn't a maybe, it's a must. You have to take control of your narrative, or otherwise somebody else will. And you can build a brand that cultivates authority, that communicates your core values, your expertise, but also helps you boost your visibility. Your personal brand is already established. And the goal then is not just to have a personal brand, because you already have one, whether you realize it or not. Your goal is to build a strong one. And by starting to control the narrative and controlling your personal brand, you can make sure that you position yourself to earn more, advance further, and attract more clients. A good personal brand is what sets you apart and fuels both your success, your employer's success, and your client's success. But on the flip side, the price of staying hidden, not showing up, not making any changes is stagnation. You can either evolve or stay the same, but there's no growth or opportunities if you don't start showing up. So essentially, in a nutshell, when somebody signs up to work with you, they're saying yes to you. And so your personal brand is the reason they decided to work with you. You can amplify that. There are three core components that branding helps you establish. And the first one is recognition. How can your branding, when you start working on it, it helps people remember you, it increases your visibility, and helps people identify who you are apart from the competition. It also helps position yourself as an expert in a special niche or your area of expertise. All of us on this call work for the same corporation, but all of us have different skill sets. We have different areas of expertise. If we were all pitted against each other, what is it about you that's going to make you different or stand apart or more appealing to a potential client? That's what you want to look at. And really what it comes down to is association. What values and traits that people associate with you, with your name, with your brand, that makes it more favorable for them to work with you? The overall impression and trust that you build with your audience can be established whenever you start working on your branding. And I promise you, all of this is going to come full circle and make sense. It probably feels like a lot of words right now, but as I get further into this, I'm going to explain it deeper. Okay. So how do you actually start to grow a brand so that it is a good one, not just one left to chance, not just somebody deciding that you're a fit or not a fit? Before we start talking about the actual concept of personal branding, I'm going to give you a quote, and I want you to just give me some guesses as to who you think this is attributed to. And I'm not going to be able to read the chat because if I move over, I'm going to lose my slideshow presentation for some reason. But here's the quote. And it goes like this. When I was young, I found out that the big toe always ends up making a hole in a sock. So I stopped wearing socks. As quirky as that is, any guesses? You can unmute yourself if you have a guess. No guesses? I know that's pretty vague. Okay. What if I gave you a clue? What if this silhouette here gives you some more clues as to the identity? How about a guess now?
Albert Einstein.
Very good. So as you can see, that just by looking at the silhouette, you can tell that it's Albert Einstein, right? And what I want you to, you're probably thinking like, what does this have to do with branding? Here's the notion that I want you to remember. It's Albert Einstein, first of all. We can tell because his silhouette is very unique. He's got that crazy hair, just the style, right? You can tell from the silhouette. But here's a concept. When Pixar starts developing characters, they actually start off with just a sketch that looks like this. It's just an outline. And that outline, that silhouette has to be so uniquely identifiable that you can tell who it is, the character, before they even start moving on to details, etc. The concept that I want you to take away is that the power of a personal brand is that you're easily able to be remembered and recognized for your uniqueness. And I don't mean being quirky and having green hair or whatever. It's that identifiable factor about you that makes you unique and nobody else, okay? So just for fun, I'm just going to tell you right now, I am a huge Albert Einstein fan. I love Albert Einstein. And I was thinking, what if he was still alive in 2024? What would that look like? Maybe this is him. So I'm going to ask you a question. In this photo, what clues you in that he's wearing a Nike suit, even though the name Nike is nowhere visible on here? Any guesses? Any takers?
The logo.
The logo, the swoosh, the iconic swoosh, it's so easily recognizable. So then the question then, is the logo the brand? Is that synonymous? I'm going to tell you this. I don't know how many times I've started working with a trainer or somebody's come to me and they said, I want to start working on my personal brand. Can you make me a logo? But here's what they fail to understand. And this is a common misconception. Your brand is more than a logo. Really, it's the essence of how we feel about you, how we connect with that corporation, with that entity, or with that person, and understand its values, its purpose, and how it fits into our lives. The branding process itself assigns meaning to that entity or to that person. Without the meaning and the association, they're just symbols. So when people come to me and say, I need a logo because I want to build my brand, they're not going to be very successful because there's no meaning and association to me. It's just a symbol. I don't feel anything about that thing until I understand what they stand for. And often, in thinking about branding and personal branding specifically, we want to equate that with celebrities, influencers, and big businesses. But there really is not that much different components between a corporate brand and a personal brand, except that you're using it to build a person versus an organization. So let's explore a hypothetical scenario, and this just goes to show the power of a personal brand. Let's say that Albert Einstein was still alive in 2024, and maybe he's an influencer. This might be what his Instagram looks like, right? So we're seeing a lot of stuff that he's posting, but it's telling us a story about him. Even though, let's pretend we didn't know anything about him. At a glance, I can see and tell some things about him. And just for fun, I'll blow these up. So here he is taking a selfie. I can tell that maybe he's into casual, he's not polished professional, like too rigid. He's here chilling at the bar, jet setting on his jet. He loves Nike. How cool would it be? I don't know about you, but I'm a super nerd. So I would love to sit in a class if he was a college professor. And he played music. He's very into thinking, etc., and just very relatable personality. And so the reason I'm sharing all of that is because when we're thinking about showing up as a personal brand and establishing our brand, the key word, the operative word is personal. We have to think about what draws us to certain personalities, what makes us as a human being connect emotionally with somebody else, with another human being. And luckily, there are some things that you can consider that are going to help position you so that you are more easily relatable to another person. And these factors are these: confidence, showing a level of confidence, self-awareness, vulnerability, consistency, empathy, adaptability, and your uniqueness. So breaking that down, it doesn't really take that much to stand out because you're not going to be fabricating or making up who you are. It's not like I'm telling you make up a persona. Branding then, personal branding specifically, is more about developing your self-awareness and showing up in the best possible light so that you control the narrative than it is about creating a fake persona. So just to revisit so that you fully understand these concepts, when you're building a personal brand, there's 3 core concepts that you want to start really tapping into. As we look at over history, the people that stand out and are well remembered share these common attributes or characteristics. They display a level of confidence, self-awareness, and a level of vulnerability. And so if we see Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, it takes confidence to be able to say, I stand for this. It takes vulnerability to say, I stand against that, because there's backlash going to come. And it takes a high level of awareness to be able to say, I stand for something. This is who I am. And so the people that we remember over history display these three characteristics: confidence, self-awareness, vulnerability. And in a sea of sameness, when fitness is the same thing over and over, thousands and hundreds and millions of accounts, how do you start to stand out? Start working on displaying these three components. And jumping back to the concept of personal branding, it's not just limited to fame or to business marketing. You can apply these concepts to yourself to make an impression that lasts, whether you're aiming for fame or simply just wanting to elevate your career and get a promotion and move up. So to further iterate this idea, when we think about scientists, for example, consider these three: Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, and Edwin Hubble. They were all born around the same time. They were leading figures in their field. We could say they're competitors. Yet when we think about scientists, the first person that usually comes to mind is Albert Einstein. Why is that? I don't think that he intentionally set out to build a strong personal brand. That wasn't a thing per se back then, but he has these elements that we can attribute to building a good personal brand. It's self-awareness, vulnerability, and self-acceptance. And when we look at this diagram here, we can see that Marie Curie, Edwin Hubble, they displayed vulnerability, a level of self-acceptance. But really, Albert Einstein was very vocal and very self-aware. And we know a lot about him through his writing, through his speeches, through the things that he stood for, that he stood against. That's a level of self-awareness that we all have to try to cultivate, because if we can articulate those things, these three things come together to help other people understand who we are and what our value is. So you might be saying to yourself, I don't care about being famous. I just want to do my job. I just want a good career. I don't really care about Insta fame. That's great. I get it, because I don't aspire for that either. But what I do want is some control over the quality of the work that I do, who I get to work with, and what my career opportunities are. And you really can't position yourself with those opportunities. Personal branding matters, whether you want to move up the corporate ladder or if you even eventually want to start your own business or be a leader. Consider this: 70% right now of employers polled use social media to screen candidates when they're deciding who to hire. Alternatively, 43% of employers use social media to even check on their current employees. So if you think that what you're posting doesn't matter and nobody's noticing, it really does make a difference. Or on the flip side, let's say that you eventually want to move up into a leadership position. If you start developing your personal brand, executives who build a strong personal brand can actually increase their company's visibility by up to 89%. So let's take Steve Jobs, for example. He's synonymous with Apple. But without Steve Jobs, would Apple still be Apple, the same Apple that we know and love? Would it still remain the same iconic brand and retain the same emotional appeal? I don't know, maybe not, but my guess is probably not. So then where do you start with personal branding? Let me further explain it like this. Think about the last movie that you watched. What was the hero's origin story? Who were their mentors? Who influenced their thought process, their way of thinking? What were their defining attributes? And we already listed some of the defining attributes. Who or what were their nemesis? What did they work to overcome? What were their challenges? The most compelling stories have conflict and imperfect characters. We all relate as human beings to flaws over perfection. So then going back to that video that I showed you earlier with Joey Swoll, I'll be honest, I had no idea who he is. You're probably familiar with him. I was not. But just from watching that one video, there was some defining attributes and values that I could discern from that one video based on what he was saying. And so for me, I gathered that he values respecting others, that he values a level of professionalism, of authenticity, of being empathetic and thoughtful, and holding yourself accountable to a higher standard. These are values that I can see that are important to him. Then as a viewer of his content, subconsciously, I'm either deciding I agree with you because I believe what you believe, or I don't believe what you believe. And that association with those values is what makes me either like him as a person, as a personality, and want to know more, or it repels me. And so really what I'm getting at is that your values that you show up, whether you're specifically saying this is what I stand for, or it's taken through context because what you're posting is saying something about you. Those values are what builds those connections. And ultimately, all of us are trying to connect with people. I don't care if you're trying to get a promotion because you want to work with the next company, or if you're trying to attract a client. It's people that we're trying to connect to. And so to go back to explain my fascination with Albert Einstein so that it makes sense in a way, is that I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why am I so drawn to this personality? Because I'll be honest with you, I have bookmarks. He's on my wall back here. I'll show y'all later. Like Albert Einstein is a thing for me. And I started thinking about what is it about him? And it's really because we share common values. As I started building my company and thinking about my life motto, my philosophy, these are things that are important to me. Having a job that I'm passionate about, that feels like I have a purpose. I want to be able to be creative and express myself as I please. I have not always been the best person. I'll be honest with you. When I was a teacher, I was not a good teacher. I sucked. The kids probably hated being in my classroom, but it's because I was not in a good space. It wasn't a fit for me. And it's important to me now, as I've grown older, to understand that these things are important to me. I want to live life with passion. I want to continuously be learning and evolving. I want to make sure that I teach others and lead with kindness and empathy. And when I'm looking at Albert Einstein and everything that he's contributed, I know that he has a high level of curiosity. He had an insatiable curiosity. He was creative. He was persistent. He trusted his intuition. He was not afraid to be independent. He had a level of humility. More importantly, he was very passionate about his thoughts, his ideas about the universe, about human beings, about understanding the world in general. All of these things, aside from the quirkiness and the visible, what he looks like, all of these things subconsciously speak to me. They're like, you know what? It makes me feel like I believe what he believed. And that's what your goal then is as a personal brand, is to be able to have people say, you know what? I get you. I believe what you believe because we believe the same things. You can help me because I believe in you. So basically branding, the concept, people buy you. And just a little bit more about Einstein. And mind you, this is AI generated. My kids pointed out he has extra toes, whatever. But summing this up, we as people, he's been gone for quite a long time, but the appeal's still there because we know these things about him. There's an origin story. We know who his mentors are. We know his attributes. We know what his struggles and challenges were. So what I'm getting at is where you start then is storytelling and self-awareness. And what you want to consider is, what's your story? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your challenges? What have you accomplished, or what are you working towards? Who has shaped your values and thinking? Understanding who you are as a person will help you position yourself better to be able to communicate that value to your target audience, whether it's a client or a future employer or even a new business prospect. It's not about highlighting just the positive. Your goal is not to be perfect or to pretend that you are, because we're all human beings. We can see through the fakeness, but ultimately people relate to people. We relate to imperfection. We want to see struggle because it gives us a glimmer of hope for growth. Without conflict, it's all uninteresting and we become unrelatable. And just like movies, without conflict, can you imagine going to a movie where nothing happened, there was no challenges, the character wanted something and then he got it, that would probably be the most boring movie in the entire world. It would bomb, right? So the same thing, storytelling is a powerful tool. We as human beings emotionally invest in brands and people that tell stories that we connect with. And just like any good movie, your personal brand should have an origin story, mentors who guide you, defining attributes, challenges that you've overcome, a nemesis. Right now, Albert Einstein, when you think about Albert Einstein's name, it's synonymous with genius, but he faced a kind of a difficult road. If you didn't already know, he didn't start speaking until he was 4. In grade school and through college, he was seen as lazy. He was even told that he would never amount to anything. Yet, despite all of those obstacles and all the people telling him that he was wrong and that he would never amount to anything, he persisted because he was strong in his confidence, he was self-aware, and he displayed a level of vulnerability that said, you know what? I might not know this is the right answer, but I'm going to pursue it anyways. And if he didn't have that courage, then we wouldn't have that name synonymous with genius as we do today. So in Simon Sinek's words, this perfectly, in my mind, encapsulate what branding is. It's your purpose and your passion that really make you stand out and different. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. Displaying vulnerability can be a strength in personal branding. It is a strength because as human beings, it's about showcasing authenticity. And we can see through BS. We really can. And so how do you apply this to yourself? You want to start by thinking about what makes you unique. Embrace your strengths, acknowledge your weaknesses, be visible, be consistent, and just show up. Just like Steve Jobs, his personality was intertwined with Apple. Your personal persona is going to be synonymous with your professional brand, and especially going forward. Personal branding is not just for celebrities or CEOs, it's really for everybody. And it's your choice how you want the world to see you. It's the authenticity of your story that's going to help make you stand apart. Whether you realize it or not, you do have a personal brand right now. It's either saying nothing about you and letting people formulate their own opinions, or it's saying something positive or something negative. So when people Google you, they're going to perceive you in some way, whether it's your friends, your colleagues, or the public. And it's just not just online, it's in person. It's every interaction that you have that shapes your reputation. It's that personal narrative. So the question is, how do you want your story to be delivered? Do you want to drive that story or do you want to leave it to chance? Personal branding isn't just about self-promotion. It's so much deeper than that. It's your reputation that precedes you in any room and lingers after you leave. Your personal brand is already out there through every post, through every interaction, through every encounter with people. The power then lies in steering your brand conscientiously and taking control of that narrative. You can build a personal brand that resonates. You just first have to define your goals, figure out what it is you want to achieve, and what transition you're seeking in your career. What do you want to be known for beyond just titles? What is the essence of your work? The what, the how, the why. It's about making your identity clear, memorable, and uniquely yours. You'll want to fine-tune your personal brand to avoid confusion. It's about being recognizable and positioning yourself as unique. Your brand isn't just about you, though. It's about who you serve with your talents and your skills. Who benefits from what you have to offer? Your brand is that value proposition. And in today's age, there's some things that you want to start thinking about. You want to have a personal website. Your social media presence is vital. Having a LinkedIn presence is going to be vital because they offer you control over how you're perceived, your narrative, and allow you to share your story, your personality, and your career journey in depth. So my challenge to you after this is that you audit what's currently out there. You can choose the platforms that align with your goals and choose to show up where your audience is most active. But really, when it comes down to personal branding is about personal growth. It's about understanding who you are and who you aspire to be. And it's about having a clear vision of the impact you wish to make in the world. As Albert Einstein once said, once we accept our limits, we go beyond them. So personal branding is much like that philosophy. It's about embracing your true self, your limits and your quirks and your strengths. In doing so, you create a narrative that's uniquely yours, a narrative that is not going to confine you, but instead it opens up a world of possibilities for you, a world where you can go beyond what you once thought was possible. Your personal brand really is the passport that's going to get you to this new world. It's not just a facade for the world to see, but it's really a reflection of your innermost aspirations, your values, and the essence of what makes you. And there's no one else like you. That's the power of personal branding. And a quote from me, the world's going to perceive you based on your personal brand, but it really is up to you then to ensure that you're cultivating a personal brand that embodies who you are authentically and leaves a favorable impression. Intended that to be a little bit shorter, but I do want to open this up for some questions. And I know that was a lot to take in, but hold on, let me slide over here. Let me know what the biggest takeaway from all of this, if anybody wants to share. Hold on.